Fine. So this is from the harder daf myself last week. So, but we're not too far from the next mission, so that's exciting. And then the end of the paragraph is in sight. So, Nun Daled Amud Aleph 54a on the bottom. More about acquiring fields. You have a field that its borders are established, its boundaries are noticeable. Now, how much do you have to do to the field? You do something to the field, you've acquired it. How much do you have to do? There's one little digging, you've acquired the whole field. Or Shmuel argues, no, lo kana, ela makom achoshe bilvad. You dig a little bit in one place, you've acquired that place. But how do you mean when you're doing something significant, you want to show really that your ownership on the field. So Shmuel argues, it says one little digging shows that you want this part of the land. But who says you've shown that you've acquired the whole land? Let's say the field doesn't have the most distinguishable borders. So ad kama. So how much you have to do to acquire everything? But here you don't have the borders clear. So what do? So basically, you take a plow and you make a furrow. You go from east to west and back the other way, or from west to east and back the other way. And not only have you acquired, let's say, the field the long way, but you've acquired it also the other way. So whether if you're doing it vertically, you've acquired it also horizontally. If you're doing it horizontally, you've acquired it vertically, because that's like going across the whole field. You're going from, like the Rashbam says, Mizrach Lamar. You're going from east to west. And therefore, you've acquired, you made two rows in the field across the length of the whole field. But that's as if you really plowed the whole field. That's enough that you've shown ownership on the whole field. Okay. Fine. Amar Rabbi Shmuel. Okay, here comes it's very interesting. So what's going to happen in the next, this whole Amud basically, so a non-Jew has one rule, one way to buy from him, and that is through money. In Torah law, the way you buy from a non-Jew is only through money. Now, let's say, but by Jewish law, you're going to need also a written document transferred over to you. So basically what's going to happen is the non-Jew, you've given him money. He has not yet given you a document. Someone else comes and acquires the field. So you have three people. You have the akum, really the idol worshiper, the idolater. Then you have Ruvain, who is buyer number one, and then Shimon, who goes and acquires the field. So Amr Rabbi Shmuel, Nichse Obed Gocham, the property of an idolater. Harei Hein Kimidbar, they're like a desert. Kol Machzik Behen, Zaka Behen, meaning they're like ownerless, and anybody can go and acquire it. My timer, Obed Kochavim Mechimat is the Istalik way, and Yisrael Lokani Adamad Ishtar Liyadeh. Hilkach Harei Kimidbar, Kol Machzik Behen, Zaka Behen. So basically, once you've given the non-Jew the money, once you've given the idolater the money, so that's it. In his world, the sale's over. However, you still need a written document. So it no longer belongs to the idolater anymore. He's already received your money. But it doesn't yet belong to the buyer because he hasn't got a document. So it's like a midbar. It's ownerless. So Shimon goes, as I say, he goes to Chaparine, yeah? He knows about these laws. He's going to go and snatch the field. So Shimon goes, digs a little bit into the field, makes a little furrow, makes a little digging, and he has acquired the field. So the Rashbam points out the second guy is really called a Rasha. Why? The general halacha, when someone's involved in something, in a business transaction, you don't have really a right to go, you're involved in buying a house ready for a month or two, and I'm like, oh, and I go and I give the seller a much better offer, right? Knowing that you don't know, that's an exact example, but when you're involved in buying something, you have to let the guy sort of finish that deal. So this guy's involved in a sale. He transferred money over somebody. someone else goes and now snatches the field from him. So the Rashbam calls it, he's called a Russia. Yeah. Now, what's the money that was given over? So the first buyer can go and try to get it out of the idolater. Good luck. But that's what this cryptic statement was, that the property of an idolater is like a midbar. What's the case? Where he got his money, so he's out of the picture. And the Jew has not got a shtar yet, so he's still involved, but the property is there ownerless. It's in limbo land. So if Shimon comes, he can take it. That was the statement of Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel. Now, what's going to happen? We're going to add in a little bit of a... No. Yeah, yes. What? Someone said the last one. Oh. Okay, so now let's get in Torah law. So the non-Jew's transaction ends once he's received the money, right? But what's going to happen if in secular law, the law of the land is you must transfer over a legal document? How do you view that? So, Amar Le Abaye le Rav Yosef. Abaye said to Rav Yosef, Mi Amar Shmuel Hachi. Shmuel really said this. V'ha Amar Shmuel, Dina de Malchus Dina, famous line, that there's the law of the land, that we are obligated to follow the law of the land for whatever ramifications that might result in. Dina de Malchus Dina. Really, there's something called Dina de. We follow the law of the land, and what's the law in Babylonia? Malka Amar, the king said, Lo likni ara ela beigarta. You don't acquire the land unless you have any garis, which means unless you have a shtar, a document. So now, how do you view that? In Torah law, the sale is done. But since we are bound to the law of the land, so really, all that happened was that in Torah law, when a non-Jew gets the money, the sale is done, right? But in Bavel, the rule was that it's not a done deal until the idolater gave the Jew a document. So how could Shmuel say that even without a document, it's ownerless, and therefore if the second guy comes, he acquires it? Even according to the non-Jewish courts in Babylonia, the king said it's not a transference of ownership until the idolater has given a document, a legal document, to the Jew. So that hasn't happened yet. So that means that Ruvain and the Akum, they're still in the middle of a transaction. It's not ownerless. If you have John selling his land, so just because he received $1 million from Shimon or from Ruvain, but if he hasn't given over a legal document yet, so then according to the law of Babylonia, it's still John's. And if it's still John's, when Shimon comes and digs in his land, he's stealing, and you can't steal. So that is a biased question to Rav Yosef. Shmuel really said that, but Shmuel said that the king said you have only acquired with a shtar. So interesting response. So Amar Le, Rav Yosef said back to Abaye, I don't know, but I have a story to prove my point. Yeah, but Uvdahava, and the story is going to prove it. Now, yeah. The Rishbam says that Rav Yosef really doesn't agree to this thing of Abaye, that the king said you can only acquire with a shtar. He says that's not really the law of the land. Rather, you can also acquire it with a chazaka. Maybe he held that there was some law like that, but it wasn't such a strong law. The king actually said it, or maybe he disagreed that such a law even existed. I don't know exactly, but he says I have a story. Uvdahave v'dor derusa. Either Dor Derus is the name of a place, or it's a village of shepherds. Okay. B'Yisrael, a Jew went and bought land from an idolater. And now, so Reuben bought land from an idolater. Shimon came in Rapik Baporta. He dug a little bit into the ground. Who owns the land? Reuben paid money. Shimon dug a little bit. Sounds like a case we just had. Also, they came to Rabbi Yehuda. They came to Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda said, "Look, maybe under the Sheni, the land belongs to Shimon because Reuben never got a shtar. He never got a document for it, and therefore never belonged to him. And Shimon went and dug a little bit, so it belongs to Shimon." That's exactly what we just said in the name of Shmuel. So you want to ask me, what about the king said and Dina Damakus Adina? He said, I don't know, but I have a story. And Rabbi Yehuda seemed to side with that original statement of Shmuel. Okay, so to that, Abai is like, hold on, this story is not a proof. Why? Dura Usaka Amris, Hasan Ba'age Mitmari Havu, the Inu Gufa, the Havi Yave Taska Lamalka. Umalka Omar Mandiav Taska Lechel Ara. Hold on. That village, or that name of a place, that area, they had hidden fields. They were hiding their property from the king. You have it sometimes. You have it sometimes in Israel, right? People dig out basements, right? And the government has no idea that there's basements there, but everyone else knows that there's basements there, and they're making. Everyone's a winner. They make great money because now they have tenants, and the tenants are happy because they have to pay property tax. So yeah, these are hidden properties, and since they're okay, so they're for what? Okay, very nice. They're for what? And the king said that only someone who actually pays taxes acquires the land. These people have been evading taxes with their hidden property. They don't actually own this land. Since the idolaters don't own the land, so therefore it's not ever a good sale. And that's why when Shimon goes and digs, it belongs to him. It doesn't belong to him because the Jew never got his shtar. It belongs to him because the original salesman never owned it. Because that only belongs to somebody who pays property tax. And since your property is not registered, so then you've evaded taxes. The king said it doesn't belong to you, and therefore it doesn't belong to you. Okay. So therefore, don't bring me a proof from this village of shepherds. Not a good proof. Okay. Next story. Rav Huna Zabin Aram Obed Kochavim. Rav Huna bought land from an idolater. So now what happened? These Jews are smart, no? They went and they dug a little bit in the land. They went to Rav Nachman, and what did he say? And he said, "Yeah, take it. It's yours." The original guy who bought it, he never got a shtar. He never got a document. So he said, "Amar le mai daite." He said, "One sec. Why are you saying that it belongs to the second guy? Who do you hold like?" He said, "The Amar Shmuel nichse obed kochavim harein kemidbar." You hold like that original statement of Shmuel that we started off today with, that anybody who just gives over money to the idolater, that property is like a desert, it's ownerless, and then someone else can come and acquire it. Meaning, if you're agreeing to Shmuel, I have another statement of Shmuel for you, and what are you going to do with this? Turning to the next page, why don't you agree to the other statement of Shmuel? What's the other statement of Shmuel? The Amar Shmuel, Lo kana ella makom machusha bilvad. Shmuel has another statement that when you do a little dig in a field, you do not acquire the whole field. You only acquire that little section. So just because you hold a Shmuel in one area, that you have the ability to acquire this field, but he did one little dig, so he should not acquire the whole field. So what's the obvious answer? I split. I agree to Shmuel in one area. I'm not bound to everything else Shmuel says. Amrle b'hayi ana kishmaitin sirle. The Amar Ravuna, Amar Rav, came and Chinikish ba mochash echad kana cool. In this case, I agree to the teaching of Ravuna that said in the name of Rav, who argued on Shmuel, that as long as you do one little dig on the field, that's enough to that is enough to acquire the whole field. Okay, so basically, just quick summary: we had a machlokas Rav and Shmuel in the beginning, and now if it's on ownerless property, if you're buying something, I buy from Steve, I can do one dig and we can make up a deal. I can acquire the whole thing. But ownerless property, you have to do one little dig, or you have to actually do more than that to acquire the field. That's one machlokas. Secondly, we have the statement of Shmuel that even though by a non-Jew, an idolater, by them, as long as you give them money. If you're not dealing with a Jew, as long as you give money over, so then the deal is done. But you still need to give a document over to the Jew for the Jew to acquire the land. So if only money was transferred and the document was not transferred, the land is in limbo. Said Shmuel, anybody can take it. And we had a bunch of stories where people went and they took it and it belonged to them. Okay, fine. Yeah. Shalach Rav Huna bar Oven. Okay. Rav Huna bar Oven sent the following statement. Shalach, I guess, to his yeshiva, Shalach to another city. Shalach Rav Huna bar Oven Yisrael, Shalach Sadam over Gechavim. A Jew went and acquired land from an idolater who bought Yisrael Acher b'hichzik ba, and another Jew went and acquired that land. Ein motzino so miyado. We do not go and remove that land from the second person. V'chein haya Rav Avin v'Rav Hila v'chol rabbaseinu shavin b'davar. Many Rebbeim, Rav Avin, Rav Elazar, all the rabbis held that this halacha, the one that Shmuel said originally, that since you didn't get a document, if the second Jew comes and acquires that land, we cannot remove the property from his hand. There's a legal acquisition. Okay. Continuing our discussion of Dina de Malchusa Dina. So has many ramifications. The passing topic to go into, that when the secular government makes laws, which laws are we bound by and which laws are we not bound by? Taxes seems to be we are bound by. What about when it's a red light and there's no, or you can't walk and that's also a law. What about I don't know, in yeshiva by Purim time, there's a store in the area that didn't care about showing your ID to acquire alcohol. I remember we had to ask a rabbi, like, what can you do there? So any law by the secular government, you always have to know, how does that fit into this concept of Dina de Malchusa Dina? So let's see. Amar Rabba, Hani Tlat Mili, the following three rulings, three statements. Ishtayile Ukvan bar Nechemya, Reish Galusa. So they were told him by Ukvan bar Nechemya that in the name of the Reish Galusa, Mishmei de Shmuel, in the name of Shmuel. So first of all, Dina de Malchusa Dina. Okay, that's one halacha. Dina de Malchusa Dina. The Arisusa de Parsoi ad mem shnin. So fields that you acquire from the Persians. So usually a chazaka takes 3 years, but in Persia it took 40 years. That was the rule of the land in Persia. So if you're living there, right? So the case here is that the Rashbam says that let's say a non-Jew came and had that land for 40 years. And now a Jew came and bought it from him. So now a Jew sold land to a non-Jew. Non-Jew was there for 40 years. Jew number 2 buys it now. The original Jew can't say, what do you mean it belongs to me? He stole it from me. I'm sorry, the non-Jew was there for 40 years on the land. In our country, when you're on a land for 40 years and the original owner doesn't say anything, so then the second guy has acquired it. So generally, we know it takes 3 years, but in Persia, it takes 40 years, and therefore, you're bound by the law of the land, and for whatever ramifications it might have, there it takes 40 years to acquire the land. Okay. The Hani Zarure, the Zabin Ara, Letaska, Zvinhu Zvini. Also, as long as you pay the taxes, so then the land belongs to you. Rashbam explains that poor people couldn't pay taxes. They couldn't pay the taxes. What they do? So the rich people would now buy the land from from the government, basically, from the king, because the poor people couldn't pay taxes, and now rich people went and acquired those fields, and they do pay taxes. Since they pay taxes, the field is there. That was the law of the land. You pay taxes, you get the field. You don't pay taxes, you don't get the field. It's taken away from you. Now look, there's 2 kinds of taxes. There's property tax, right? And then there is head tax. Property tax, or property you have to pay tax on it. And head tax, you live here, so pay, not pay with your head, but head as we, maybe in some countries, but if you don't exactly, but you have to pay. So the honey mili, so let's qualify the statement. Honey mili letaska. That's when, about property taxes. That's when, if you pay property tax, then you've acquired the field. Aval lekarga lo. But a head tax, there, we don't say if you don't pay head tax, the field doesn't belong to you, and then someone else could acquire it. My time, or why not? Karga, a karkif de gavre money. The karga really nothing to do with the land. Meaning that has to do with you just living here. So somebody who works for the government wants to go and threaten you and now seize your land because you haven't paid your head tax. So that's not called the law of the land, right? Just because you have one mean government official who decides to impose his own rulings on you. No, that doesn't count. But the law of the land is that you have to pay property tax, and if not, your field will get confiscated, and someone else could buy it, and it's theirs, and they have a legal. Now it's legally belongs to them. Rav Huna Breder Rav Shu argues. He says, "Listen, afilu sari dekada mishtabi lekarga." He says even literally means barley in a jug. Even barley in a jug, meaning all of movable property is really bound to the king because of your head tax. So if you don't pay, he can take anything he wants from you, right? Even barley, which is such a low thing like barley, but even that, if you don't pay your head tax, he has the right to take it away from you. So basically, you're totally subjugated to the king. So if you don't pay a head tax, they do have a right to take away your field, and therefore, if someone else were to acquire that field, they would have legally acquired it. Yeah. Okay. So that's machlokas. If what kind of tax do you have to evade to lose your field? Property tax or even head tax? Okay. Here comes an interesting statement. We know, or we're going to know right now, that Bechor, right, a firstborn, inherits his father. And there's two kinds of inheritance. There's something called the muchzak and something called the ro'ui. Muchzak is that which the father 100% owns the day of his death. Yeah, he lives in a house, his name's on the house, he dies, son inherits the house. Then there's things that are ro'ui, things that are fitting the father. People owe him. Maybe he's owed a few houses. So that's already more complicated. So what happens if the father didn't pay his tax, right? Now, so if he didn't pay his property tax, okay, that's one thing. But we just said that even all your metal and all your movable property is also totally subjugated to the king. So we're about to ask, okay, hold on. That means if he never paid his head tax, basically all of his property is really in the possession of the government. And therefore, the son will never inherit anything. So if your law is true, that evading head tax gets all your things confiscated, even the barley in a jug, so if that father were to die, his son is left with nothing. If his son is left with nothing, then you've totally nullified the halacha in the Torah that says that the son inherits. Rosh Hashanah points out, this is not really such a strong question. Why? Because this only applies where this law of the land applies. You haven't nullified the rule of the Torah, right? In Babylon, that's the rule. In Bava, that's the rule. If you don't pay a head tax, your stuff is confiscated. But in other parts of many other countries in the world, that's not the rule. So in those countries, you still inherit your father. Meaning, we're bound to the law of the land. So if the law of the land says you don't pay head tax, your stuff is confiscated, how does any Jewish firstborn inherit his father? Because that land is not the father's at the day of his death. It will be the father's when he pays his tax. He could acquire his land back. That's called ro'ui. Ro'ui does not get it passed down in Yerusha. Yeah, Jules, make sense? Yeah. Okay. So Yeah.
No.
Oh, okay. So
it makes sense.
let's see. Let's read it inside him. Yeah. Amar Rav Ashi, Amar Lihuna Bar Nosson. So Kashi ba Ameimar. Okay, listen, that statement, that's a very difficult statement. Why? Im kain batalta Yerushas benoha bechor kahava le'roi ke'ena bechor no tel beroi kibemukzak. You've nullified the halacha of inheritance for a firstborn. He doesn't inherit. No tel beroi kibemukzak. Right? Just the bechor gets a double portion. The double portion is only if it's muksak, if it's already owned to the father. If it's ra'ui, then he does not get the amr lei. So then he said, I don't understand. If that's true, so then afilu taskanami. So like, how will a firstborn ever acquire any real estate of his father? Right? He'll never get any real estate from his father. He said, according to you, not only have you nullified all movable items that the son will get a double portion in the inheritance, you've also nullified, according to the other opinion, that there's two opinions. If you evade taxes, they get all your real estate taken away, or if you evade taxes, you get all of your movable items taken away. So he said you've totally nullified the rule of inheriting a double portion. He said, but according to you, a firstborn will never acquire any real estate. Is that plausible? What do you have to say? No, of course he acquires real estate. When Elamais Neymar, the Yohiv Taska Umis, he paid the tax and then he died. So Hachanami, Yohiv Kargo Umis. You have to say that the case is where he paid a head tax and then he died. Meaning you haven't nullified the rule that a firstborn, receives a double portion from his father. Just in a case where he paid and then died, the son inherits it. But you are right. In the case that he doesn't pay and then dies, but that's not called nullifying the rule of the firstborn. That's a very strong statement. But Talta Yerusha, you've totally destroyed this whole halacha. Of course not. It just means when he pays and then dies, then the halacha stands. So too over here, when the guy pays, his real estate tax and dies, he passes it on in inheritance. So too when the guy, pays his head tax, so then he could pass on his movables to his firstborn son. Amar of Ashi, Amar Lihuna Bar Nosson. Sha'altinu l'sifrei de Rava. It sounds like Rava had scribes that worked for him, that would write up documents. So he asked the scribes of Rava, who's the halacha like? The Amruli Hilchasa ki Rav Huna Brei the Rav Yeshua. Rav Huna Brei the Yeshua was the one who just said that if you don't pay head tax, even your barley and your jug, even all your movable items get confiscated by the government. So the scribes of Rava who were used to writing documents, so they said the halacha is according to him. And therefore, if you don't pay your head tax, so it's true that even your movable items will be confiscated, until you actually pay. And if someone else comes in the interim and acquires them, then they belong to them. So now, that's what Huna Bar Nosson told Rav Ashi. But it says below, it's not true. It's not true. The halacha is not like him. If you don't pay head tax, so then that's not the law of the land, that if you don't pay head tax, they confiscate even your movable items. Well, if that's not true, so why were Rava's scribes saying that it's true? And we asked Rava, and they said it's true. This statement, I don't fully understand it. It sounds like that's the way they'd write up their documents, and they were just saying this to defend their practice of writing up these documents. They were writing documents which seem to say that if you don't pay, the head tax, all your property will be confiscated. So I just had a hard time with that. Meaning, halacha is not that way, but since their practice was to write these documents, they just said that's the halacha to defend their practice. So I don't know. I don't understand what that means. Meaning, really, the halacha is not that way. So, really, if someone else require the movables, if you didn't pay, if Reuven didn't pay his head tax, and Shimon comes and takes his stuff, really, we say, Shimon, you have not acquired it, because the lack of a head tax payment of Reuven does not render the property ownerless for you to go and acquire it. However, Rabbi scribes that write up documents, they would write this in their documents. I don't know why would they write this in their documents if that's not the law. But I don't know. That's I don't know. Yeah, the Rashbam says Shelo kedenichtavu. They wrote these documents improperly. Yeah, and then the fields were sold and then returned to their owner. Meaning the scribes ever wrote these documents that if you don't pay head tax, so then and someone else goes and takes your property, even your movable items, it belongs to them. And the Rashbam says, yeah, these people they would write these documents improperly, and then we had to return the fields back to the original owner. So I don't know, maybe the scribes weren't Jewish. I don't know, maybe they were knowledgeable. I don't know. This is a little baffling to me, but okay, fine. It is strange, right? Okay. The Amar of Ashi Pardachta Misayea Masa. So now, back to paying taxes. So anybody who works has to pay taxes. The Pardachta is the guy who doesn't work. He doesn't do anything. He's the Adam Batal, the Rashbam says, Mimalacha, doesn't do work, Limud, or from studying, or from Derech Eretz, being involved, I guess you'd say in Yiddish, a couch potato, yeah? No, whatever, he doesn't do anything. So says the Gemara, he also has to pay tax. Don't think he is excluded from taxes. But we're going to qualify the statement. The honey mili, the atzil te masa. About andiski, siata d'shmai, meaning, when does he pay tax? When the government official comes and says, counts him as one of the people that has to pay taxes. And then the nice people in the city, they basically say, like, he doesn't work, he doesn't have any money. We'll cover for him. We'll pay his taxes for him. In that case, he has to pay them back. He has to reimburse them. But if he was never counted to pay tax in the first place, meaning from the government, so then the Gemara says that's direct divine assistance, and therefore he does not need to pay anybody taxes. So now, if the original, the government official who's the one in charge of collecting taxes says you must pay, and then the city goes and says they saved him, and they said no, he doesn't have any money, and we'll take on the burden of his taxes. So then he has to pay them back. But if the guy in charge forgot about him, didn't count this guy when he was doing his head count or whatever, so then there's no reason why the guy has to pay the tax. Yep. Okay. Fine. Oh, we have a few minutes. Okay. Amar Ravasi, Amar Rav Yochanan. So, okay, this is really a good stopping point, but we'll start a little bit because we have a few minutes. We have 10 minutes, yeah. So this is going to begin a whole new discussion now. Why is it here? It's here because that's so. So now basically that we had earlier, the beginning of yesterday, it was like a long time ago, but you have a field with a fence. So if you acquire one side of the field, you have not acquired the other field. So the fence separates the two fields. Now we're going to talk about other ways to separate a field. And therefore the rule of acquiring one part of the field will stand true. Well, if you have something else which divides the field into two, so then you acquire one side of the field then it's not acquired. You've not acquired the other field. Okay, so what's that case? Amar Rav Asim Rav Yochanan. HaMeitzar v'Chatzev mafsikin v'nechse hager. The Meitzar, the border, that's that will divide the property. Right now, we're talking about a ger because that's the way to refer to ownerless property. A guy who converts and then dies, and he has no inheritors. That it just means ownerless property. So now, in the middle, you have either a border that clearly delineates the two fields, or you have a fence we had, or you have a plant called a chatzev. Does it say what a chatzev is? No, right? It just says the chatzev plant. Yeah, it says who Elon, oh Esav.
That's a plant is either a shrub or a herb which roots extend directly downward rather than
Oh, good. But fishy yard v'yonek kenegdo, but ain't a yonek. Right. Meaning, you plant this plant. Apparently, Yoshua planted this plant. Now, this plant goes straight down. It doesn't spread and go to both sides, and then take sustenance from both fields. It goes straight down. So you have that plant that's now dividing a tree or a plant that divides up two sides of a field. So that also is mafsikin b'nechse hager, and therefore, if you would like to acquire the property, you have to acquire both sides of the property. Acquiring one side will not help you or the other side. Now we're going to have other examples where division plays a factor, and we're going to get a little bit on a digression and go over there. Aval inyan peya v'tuma lo, but it is not considered a divider for peya or for tuma. So now we're going to see in a second what that means. So peya, so I think it's the first Mishnah. I think in the second paragraph says that peya you have to take off a corner field. It really means you can have any part of your field, I believe. It doesn't have to be the corner, but yeah, peya means the corner. So now, what's one field? What's two fields? How do you divide a field up? Let's say you have a field with a river in the middle. Let's say you have a field with a path in the middle. So is that one field? Is that two fields? That's the whole mission. In many cases, yeah. So now a lot of these interesting words that let's see if we can get them down. So he also Rabbi Amr Yochanan afilu lepeya v'tuma. He argues even for peya and for tuma is considered a division. Okay, so peya ma'i. What's happening here in peya? It's non the elu mafsikin lepeya. The following actually divide a field when it comes to the halachos of peya. So hanachal, either nachal means like a very rocky, not straight area, or it means a river. V'hashlulis, hashlulis sounds like it's an area where just water was collected, a bunch of water that was collected from the rain. That's two. The derech harabim, Rashbam says when it's 16 amas wide, so then that's already considered a public walking way. 16 amas wide, that's where the public walks through. If that's in the middle of your field, that divides it into two. The derech hayachid, Rashbam says is 4 amos. So he says it's a lo zu avzu, meaning for sure if 16 amos divides, for sure 4 amos divides, right? And it's two cases in the Mishnah. So 16 amos divides. That sometimes the Mishnah does a lo zu, not only this, but even the less novel case. Yeah, the way the Mishnah speaks sometimes. The derech hayachid, that also divides up a field into two for the halachas of peya. Now the shvil harabim. So a shvil is like a little pathway. It happens to be that many people walk through that pathway. So one thing, derech harabim is where like many carriages go through. We call it like a highway. Many cars go through. And the shvil harabim is when everyone comes back from shul, they all walk down that certain path, right? But there's no room for cars. So all of those things, the shvil hayachid hakavua, but it has to be a path which is, shvil harabim, right? A path for the public. The shvil hayachid, a shvil hayachid is a path not for the public, a path for the for you, your family, the locals. Maybe your neighborhood walks through there, but not for the public. But it has to be a pathway which is always there. Bein bimos or chama in the summertime, bein bimos kishamim, the rainy season, meaning the winter time. If it's there all year round, then the shvil hayachid can separate can separate the field into two. So now there's a machlokes about this chatzaf plant. Does this chatzaf plant also divide up for payah or not? But I would have thought if it's not in the Mishnah, then it shouldn't divide it up. No, I mean the Mishnah who says Elu Mafsikin doesn't mention the chatzaf plant. So you have to know the person who says that a chatzaf plant divides up the field. So how's he going to explain why it's not in the Mishnah? That's an interesting question. Okay, that is by payah. Okay, now by Tumah. Okay, so let's say you walk into an area full of fields, and you know that one of the fields, there's a grave there, a dead body there. You can't see it, but it's known that somewhere over there, one of the fields. So now you come back and you're not sure which field you walked into. So now, basically, that's a big problem because this could be that you're tameh, could be that you're impure, because there's a chance that one of those fields was the field that you walked into that has tumah. So let's see. The Tanakh. Hanichnas lebeka. You go into this valley. Valley is full of different kinds of fields. Hanichnas lebeka b'mos hageshamim. You go there during the rainy season. The tumah besad plonis, and there's tumah in that field. And now you come back and you say, Halachti lemakom halaz ve'eni yodeim nechnasi laos lemakom v'imla. I walked to that place, but I'm not sure if I walked into that field or not. So you're not sure if you are tameh. So what's the halacha? Rabbi Eliezer Omer Safek Bia Tahor. Rabbi Eliezer Mitaher. Rabbi Eliezer says that the guy is pure, and the Chachamim say that he is tameh. So the Chachamim say there's one safek here. The safek is, did you walk into a field that might be tameh? So say the Chachamim, safek, misafek, from misafek, you're tameh. And Rabbi Eliezer argues with that. Yeah. So now why does he argue on that? And it's going to get a little complicated, which we'll have to continue tomorrow. But let's just start off. Shahayir Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Safek Bia Tahor, Safek Maga Tuma Tameh. He has this halacha of Safek Bia Tahor, but the Safek, whether you walk into a Tameh area, he's going to purify you. Not like the Chachamim, but Safek Maga Tuma Tameh. If you're not sure if you touched Tuma with your hands, so then he's going to impurify you. And as you see from the very long Rashbam over here, we're going to have to continue to explain Hilchos Tuma and Tara. That's good. Good job, everyone.
I just got some